Hey everybody, I'm Kern. I'm a mobile software developer. I just want to say Techlahoma is great. Ever since we've joined that, I think our group has grown a lot. So even just this group has benefited greatly from it. Today I wanted to talk about Apple Watch and developing for Apple Watch and considering it as a real platform, just not as some added feature to an existing iOS app. Three major points I want to hit. I want to talk about product, like figuring out a market that we can niche down to sell a product, what that product might look like conceptually, and then start talking about the design constraints on the platform and how we can design around those things and come up with at least a rough sketch of what this app, hypothetical app that I'll talk about today could look like. On development, I think we were going to be short on time anyway. I've got some slides on that, but we'll probably either run through that very fast or just give you the high points and talk about how those objects need to be related when you're developing. As far as product is concerned, I look at Apple's matrix of products and I see things like, they have their kind of bread and butter things like the iPhone, iPad, the Mac, but then they have these other accessory products that are, they have to have these other devices. So if you have like an Apple Watch, that means you have a phone, right? And if you have an Apple Pencil, that means you have an iPad. Oh, thank you. So this, to me, these products here, these all indicate that this is a premium customer. They're willing to spend a lot of money on things, and I put the adapter in there as a joke, partly. But if we write products that target things like the Apple Pencil or the Apple Watch, we're selecting that premium niche of product, of customer, instead of trying to go for the lowest common denominator. So particularly if you're a native developer, this is probably where we need to be looking to niche down into those smaller markets where we can get more money. The App Store situation, it's a little weird on Apple Watch. As I'm sure you all know, two entry points for it. One is the App Store for iOS. And to even see these screenshots here, I had to open up a disclosure in the App Store. I had to scroll down like 2 entire pages just to see this content. And then you can see here, it's actually listed below iMessages. So I think that says a lot about how Apple is positioning this right now. Maybe this will change in the future and we'll get better placement on Apple Watch. If you look in the store that's actually presented from the Watch app, you can see the first screenshot, this right here, that's an iOS screenshot. So still, even a second-class citizen when you're in its store shopping for that platform. And I'm sure it would be ridiculous to try to search for apps on the watch itself and install them. So there's a couple of issues here as far as service area where you can surface your app where customers are going to see it. I think it mostly means you have to have at least some very good looking videos that show what your watch app is capable of doing in the iOS App Store in order to get people to notice. There's probably some great feature opportunities on the Watch OS store though. I've kind of watched what Apple is doing with the watch. It seems like when they first announced it, it was this do anything. If you go back and watch the commercials device, and it did a little bit of fitness stuff, but it was primarily like a fashion-forward product. And then they very quickly pivoted, and it's become a fitness product is how they're positioning it. If you look at their website, you see it's mostly people doing really active things like running or playing a sport, when it used to be someone that was dressed nicely. At this point, there are 73 different kinds of workouts you can track with the watch. We'll get into that a little bit. And these are all set up where Apple has done all the machine learning for you, where they have optimized how they're collecting that data. And we just have to tell it, we want to track this kind of workout. So I have this slide again later, and it's titled 73 App Ideas. So by the end of this talk, hopefully you guys will come up, like you could have your own app idea. And I think any one of these could be a business, legitimately. And I've even come up with a 74th one, because the one I picked isn't even on here. Just kind of scratching a personal itch of triathlon. My original plan, because I was kind of thinking about this talk a long time ago, was to develop an app for triathlon. And while I was training for this triathlon, I would work on it in the evenings, and I hit like a physical exhaustion point where that did not happen after the first couple of weeks. And mostly I just spent most of my free time sleeping if I wasn't like working out up to 20 hours a week. So the sport is triathlon. It's in the name. It's 3 different things. They swim and they bike and they run. So we're actually taking 3 of those activities we saw on the previous slide and a hidden 4th activity that we'll talk about later. The main thing about this sport to keep in mind is it takes a really long time. That's miles up there, 140.6 miles. So these events are taking many, many hours, up to 18 hours for that full length. Most people are doing stuff like this, the sprint and Olympic, so much shorter distances, a couple of hours. They might do like a half throughout the year, and then they'll do a couple other shorter races. So it's a sticky sport. They're not just doing one, they're doing maybe 5 or 6 events a year. And we can get more into that detail on that, but that means they're spending a fair amount of money on that sport. Just from race entry fees alone, they're spending maybe $500-600 a year. About 4 million athletes each year do the sport, so it's really small compared to a lot of those other sports, but it's still probably big enough to build a business on if we consider like a lifestyle business, something viable. So 4 million users, and we think about maybe 1 in 10 actually has an Apple Watch, so that's 400,000, and then maybe 1 in 10 will maybe look at or download some app that we would make, and then 1 in 10, maybe we can convince them to actually spend some money on the app. So 4,000 users, we can't be charging $1. It's not going to be ad-based, right? It's just not enough money. We need to figure out a way to get something more like $100 a year from the user, which is when we start thinking about what people are spending on equipment and training already, it's maybe not such an unreasonable number to get up into those numbers if we can come up with some kind of content that they subscribe to. Who's out there right now as far as software and services? Nike's there, but we all know how they make their money. They're selling mostly goods. There's stuff like Strava right here, which is, it's like a Instagram for workouts, basically. But they're funded. I don't know if they're even profitable. So they're not making money off their app. So we'll put those people below this line here. And above the line, we see stuff, they're actually making money off either subscriptions in an app or off the actual app itself as a product. On the right here, we have a couple of cycling apps. So not symmetrical competitors, but they're utilizing like structured workouts that tell the person when to speed up, when to slow down, what to do every day in order to prep for whatever event they've selected. Training Peaks, this is TP in the middle. They're kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room on triathlon, and they make all their money off structured training programs. They're more of a marketplace where trainers can like sell a training program for maybe $100, $200, and then on top of that, you pay like $10 to $20 a month for that subscription to access that. So I think this proves out there's a substantial market there. There's enough money for some additional players. This MySwim Pro, this is probably as far as like strategy and company structure, would maybe be something more similar to what one of us would make if we were making a workout app. So those structured training programs again. And then funnily enough, and all of that stuff takes place on the watch. Funnily enough, like while I was working on this, they came out with a triathlon race tracking app. So that works very similarly. I had already kind of worked through the design process, and I was like, yep, they're doing it the same way, which is fine. That to me just once again says there's a valid market here. I think they're selling theirs for like $10, something like that. And I think I would probably want to go a different way and maybe just give it away for free for market research. As far as hardware, got Android Wear is one of our, quote, competitors, right? But it seems like it's not there yet as far as I'm concerned. That would be really great if it took off in the future and it's a legitimate target that you can make money off of in the near future. So for me right now, it's not really a consideration, not hating on it at all. The main competitor in hardware is Garmin. This is the 935. They tend to market per sport. So if anybody was getting into a different activity, you're probably going to be head-to-head against Garmin again, just some other model of their watch. They have, generally speaking, they have about a 24-hour workout battery life time, sometimes like a week or two if you're not doing a lot of GPS tracking. So massive batteries on these things. The watches are huge. They have an always-on display, so that's pretty nice, so you don't have to wait for it to come up, which is one of the huge pains on the Apple Watch. There's really nothing we can do to mitigate that particular problem. And then the third and final thing they have is they have access to these hardware buttons. They are Garmin. To my knowledge, there's no AppStore, so any app on there is going to be made by Garmin. First party. Okay, yeah, I know there's been some changes lately. But for me, not even considering it, just looking at this niche that I have specialization in. But if they're tracking like a triathlon, they're they're going to press this button here to say go to the next event. And I think it's labeled back is the one that does that. So a little funny, but really great product. It's like the big camera, like a DLSR. Like people are carrying that around, but I want to go after the people who are doing all their photography on an iPhone 10. So when we look at the Apple Watch itself, one of the first main limitations, so that Garmin had like a 24-hour battery life, but the Apple Watch, it's got like 5 hours on the Series 2 and 3. So this is a real problem since our sport is taking longer than that a lot of times, right? Series 4, up to 5 hours. If we add like an external heart rate strap, if you're in a sport category that you can have that, that's another hour. If you have an iPhone, say in the saddlebag of your bike, that's going to double your battery runtime during that segment. I've done that trick before, and it was like 5 hours and 40 minutes I was out there, and I had 34% battery left at the end of that thing. So I think these numbers are fairly accurate. They're going to vary based on how much you're looking at your watch, things like that. Once again, we look at these times. So there's like an average time. I just calculated these based off some races I pulled down that were in CSV format. And then these cutoff times. So if the person doesn't finish in that red line, then they're out. They don't get to finish the race. So we don't really have to worry about the battery lasting that long. Not a major issue. So the Series 2 and 3, Series 4, we get that heart rate strap to 7 hours, and then up to 9 hours runtime with the onboard iPhone, right? So really, once again, it says to me, this is the segment that I need to be going after, because they're very easily covered without any additional hardware. Could maybe target these people eventually, but just be very clear about what it takes. You're going to need some extra hardware to use this and not run out of juice during the race. So just thinking about like the states of the app, and not really getting into UI at all. So we have all these different activity types that we can track, and we want to track we wanted to track a swim, and then we need some way, whether they're pushing a button or twisting the digital crown, to get to the next event. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, or even if it was, say, automatic based on the length of the race, if it knew that. They're going to have a transition period where they're going to change. Sorry, my handwriting is worse than usual right now, so it's usually pretty bad. But they'll have this transition too, and then they'll finally have a run at the end of that. And these are 3 separate workouts we're going to have to track. But then when I started looking into the APIs, it actually turns out, so these are workout types right here. This is another kind of workout, because we're going to have to track these as well. So we're just going to track these as other, which is one of those 73 workout types. And that's pretty much the app. And then we'll need to have like a start button to kick it off, and then maybe some kind of summary, and then button to close it out and reset the state of the app to the beginning. So not complicated for that first one. When looking through Apple's design docs, and on their talks, they like to say it should be glanceable, actionable, and responsive if you're making a watch app. And to me, that just means you should be able to glance at it. If you have to do something like go to the next workout, it's simple. You press a button, you're done. And then if you're looking to see how fast you're running, you shouldn't have to wait. That number should be there as fast as possible. And that's really just, responsive part comes down to just architecting your app correctly and not wasting processing cycles. So pretty simple. Other things that we need to consider when shipping a watch app, you got to have some kind of complication. So there's something to surface the app on the watch. There are 43 different variations of complication that you can support now. So for me, it's just like at different sizes for each watch and different types. To me, it's just like support a few of them, as many as you can with like a static icon on your 1.0, and then have it launch your app. And that's a good bare minimum, I think. And then anything after that is just icing on the cake. But not part of the critical path for shipping that app. Text and contrast is something they talk about a lot. I think like defaulting to text for information layout on the watch is ideal, at least at first. There's 4 screen sizes to contend with at this point. You might want to have it where they can customize what's being shown on the screen. If you're utilizing dynamic text, that means you're going to be able to resize that very easily. It's going to save you a lot of just pain on possibly even picking the wrong pattern for displaying the information to the user. And then contrast, just making sure everything is high contrast. I'm looking at the projectors now to make sure it's high contrast up there. That was my main concern. We have some haptic stuff. that we can use to communicate things to the user. Say if we wanted them to speed up or slow down, or maybe if we're doing that structured workout program, maybe to tell them, hey, this lap's over, let's start the next one. There's 9 built-in ones. Honestly, I think the vibration stuff, like a couple of them, like success and stop and start, are pretty clear, but it gets kind of murky after that. 9 is a lot to know what some like random vibration or sound means. We have a lot of the same controls we have on UIKit, just way more limited. Everything tends to be laid out by groups, so it's much easier to do layout on Apple Watch, but you're much more restricted. Until I think it was watchOS 5, you couldn't even have overlapping groups or UI elements, but now you can, which solves a lot of problems. But this is what we have to work with. As far as inputs for the device, I think this is where it really starts to get interesting on Apple Watch. We have some cool stuff like GPS, the barometer, the pedometer, and then of course the heart rate. All great stuff, especially if we're doing a workout app. We need that stuff. We can also track like any number of taps. I really think like a single tap. Anything beyond that is pretty confusing, especially in the moment. You can do long presses, and you can watch for an n number of long press gestures as well. But once again, I would steer clear of anything fancy because it's very opaque. You don't really know what you need to do. You just know that you're trying to push that button. There's force touch as well. You want to avoid using the long press and the force touch at the same time. Once again, that's going to be extremely confusing to anybody. And this force touch it belongs to the operating system once you add like an overlay menu to your app. So probably I would just avoid using it except for a menu. Just don't do it. And of course, we have the typical gestures. If you're not on the edge of the screen, you can interpret these. Once again, maybe steer clear of it unless you just really feel you need to. If they're on the edge of the display, the operating system owns that stuff, and it'll take the according action. These buttons, once again, those belong to the operating system. So if somebody presses those buttons, you don't get to see that happen. It's just going to kick you out of your app. Is what's going to happen. We do get this, however. We get the digital crown. We have a delegate method that we can use to listen for the delta on that. So we can see how much it's changed since the last update. So we can get rotational speed, things like that on that information. All of this goes away though for doing like a workout app, particularly one that includes swimming, because as soon as we kick off that swim, we got to have the water lock on. So the screen is completely useless. Once the workout has started, we press that button, done with the screen. If we wanted to use the screen, we'd have to have the person twist the digital crown to be able to use the screen again. But even then, it's probably not a good idea because then if you've ever used an Apple Watch like in very wet conditions, I'm sure you have found that you get water on it, it's detecting button presses. So all kinds of crazy stuff could be going on your watch and you don't know it. In our scenario here, it could be that the race is over as they've just started in the swim, and it's done tracking it, which would be extremely bad. I would be very upset if that happened to me with whoever made the app. So navigation, really just 2 options here. We have hierarchical, which once again, I'm not an artist, but I think you get the idea. It's like a list of things. If we drill into one of those, chevrons aren't a thing on Apple Watch, but if that helps this iOS development crowd. And then we get a detail view here, and it could be any number of things. We can scrub through these using the screen. We can scrub through using the digital crown. And once again, we can scrub through in the detail view. Our only other option is to do like a paged view. And that, of course, they can scrub back and forth. Once again, if our screen is unlocked, that's pretty dangerous in this scenario for this app, because if it was unlocked and we have them swipe to the next workout, what do? Do we end that workout and then start the transition or the whatever next workout is? That could happen accidentally very quickly. We don't want that. Kind of like working through that stuff and trying to determine how was I going to do this. I kind of had vaguely remembered they had mentioned that you could tell there was a way to hook into these button presses here. And as it turns out, if you're running a workout and they press both these buttons at the same time, it's going to fire an event on the workout session. And generally that event is something like it's any number of events, like a pause or a resume or start or end, but we will receive a pause or resume request whenever those buttons get pushed during a workout. And fortunately, we can do whatever we want when that happens. The recommended usage is to pause or resume, but here we're just going to end the current workout, and we're going to start the next workout. So since we've looked at the individual elements that we can use to make up an app, that's a circle, by the way, and a play button. So we'll start it. When they press this button, we'll start the first workout. We'll lock the screen, so we no longer get to use the screen. We're going to want to show some kind of information during the race. Let's say they're on the final leg of the race. They're running. We want to show like the elapsed time. We want to show their heart rate. We want to show how far they've run. And then we'll show, I don't know what that would be, but let's say they're running at this pace right here. So some of this data we get directly from that workout tracker. Some of it we have to do a little high school or grade school math. I don't remember when we learned that stuff to do some conversion. Oop, I have no idea. And I even have notifications turned off, yet I'm getting notifications. Okay. Well, crud. That's great. So we have this workout app. I'm not going to redraw all that stuff, but the final thing, I don't know what's happening. This is terrible. Hold on one second. There we go. I think somehow we got out of that mode. Okay, and we'll need a summary screen, right? And probably what we'll do with this view that I just took forever to draw out and then it erased it for me, is we'll want to just reload that. Huh. Thank you. Well, the real problem is it keeps taking me to like one of the last slides automatically. Yeah, just pretend, yeah, good idea. We'll make believe. So we just want to reload that same view controller over and over. That way we're not doing a bunch of extra layout. I recommend that anytime you can on watchOS, just because I hope you like Zibs, because you're stuck with them whether you like them or not. There we go. And then we'll need some kind of summary at the end, which maybe like a table view would be fine. Not a big deal. As far as development, I was going to spend more time on this originally, but I think since we're all developers, we all know how to look up developer documentation. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but you do need a number of things. You're going to need a health store. That health store has a number of functions. It is the piece that's going to request authorization from the user. If you've ever seen that screen where you're giving it access to your heart rate, like maybe your weight, whatever that app wants to use, that is also where we're going to store any data for our workout. And anything that we query out of that workout is going to come out of that health store. We're going to need some kind of configuration, and then in this hypothetical app, or the one that I'm really building, we're going to have multiple configs, right? So say if we wanted to have them go for a run, we need to pass, this is very much pseudocode, we're going to pass that workout configuration, some parameters, say we want to run outdoors. We'll need to set up a session next. And this session is responsible for like starting the workout, prepping it, pausing, resuming it, and ending it. And so we'll want to pass it that health store so it knows where to put that data and where to get it. And then we'll want to pass it the config so it knows what kind of workout we're going to track and how to optimize the sensors. So it might do things like adjust like the GPS accuracy of the watch for tracking that workout. On watchOS 5, there's a new HKLiveWorkoutBuilder. It's a subclass of Workout Builder. And if I can find that slide, I may just skip to it. It creates and saves the workouts. It adds the samples, events, and metadata. on the workout builder, but this live builder is even cooler. We can only use it on the watch, but it'll automatically sample and collect all of our events for our workout. So that whole time that thing's running, it's adding stuff to that time series database, whether it's your heart rate, GPS position, the distance that you've run, and then we can customize what that's tracking. So we're not stuck with just that. Here's some code samples. I'm just gonna walk through these. I don't think we need to cover this stuff, but I can make the slides available, and frankly, I just plagiarized them from Apple's talk, so you can get them there. Troubleshooting, if you like troubleshooting your development environment, you're gonna love developing for Apple Watch. So if you thought like going to an iPhone was rough, this is way worse. It's gonna fail all the time. Sometimes it'll say that it can't find a device. It'll say there's no paired watch. It can't see the iPhone. Sometimes everything's running and you're not getting, your delegate methods aren't firing. And I think I have a theory on what's happening there, but when that happens, just erase your simulator settings and start over. Everything should start working again. And these are really kind of in order of like the most painful things you have to do. Like restart Mac is my last resort, right? At that point, if that doesn't work, I may just need to take some time off and go on vacation. And then one fun one, and they don't say this anywhere, is you cannot do swimming in the simulator. I don't know why, but apparently it just crashes. So who knows? Yes, exactly. So, and that's why I recommend the watch in the pool as opposed to the MacBook. So once again, 73 app ideas I'm using for these workouts. There's like an additional 5 or 6 state things listed in here, but really there's not even 73 people here. So there's enough here for everyone here to make a small company that makes a workout app and probably do all right. Some of these, like bar, all of these things, people spend a lot of money on this. Golf's in here. I think there are already some players there, but all these other ones, who's to say that you don't come in and execute better and capture that market? Have some resources here. Ignore that one on the bottom. I just didn't quite finish. I was like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed. I started to port like Apple's example app up to watchOS 5. You can find it for like watchOS 3, I think, and it works with some tweaks here and there. There's a couple of WWDC videos I highly recommend. They're both right around this workout stuff for Apple Watch. Some very key information that's hidden in those talks it's difficult to find otherwise. And then, of course, if you've never read the Human Interface Guidelines for Apple's platforms, or if it's been a while, I highly recommend going to that URL. It's a great read. Even if you're not really an Apple developer, it'll make you think about these things a little more closely. And that's it. I'm open for questions if anybody wants to ask now, or we can just talk afterwards. I think I'm looking forward to your talk where you've started like a multi-million-dollar fishing app company for Apple Watch. So, yeah. Yeah, so and it's interesting because that means that Apple spent time building like the core motion like stuff for that. So they have somebody there, I guess, fishing with an Apple Watch on. Is his job? I don't know. So, sounds pretty good.
I have a question.
Sure.
How has that changed in the recent, like you were mentioning before, the change that they've made in marketing towards more active, but
yes.
How have the SDKs been changing over that time?
The big one in watchOS 5 and iOS 12. Oh, yeah. What's changed as far as development for improvements for workout apps? Originally, basically, you were tracking the workout. And now, at this point, by the time we're at watchOS 5, Apple's tracking the workout for you. It's like their own process that's running. With watchOS 5, if your app crashes, you actually get a chance when your app relaunches to grab that session and resume it. So before that, you would have had to do all that work on your own. If you see like reviews of apps where somebody's angry because they lost their workout, it's because on watchOS 4, it was their problem. So to me, the big thing is that workout builder and then having those built-in types where they've already optimized the workout before you. Because otherwise, you were having to say, I want to track this GPS at this frequency. I want to track their heart rate at this pace. And now you just say, track these things for me, and then you query that database. So that's the big improvement to me. Did that answer your question? Okay, good.
And then how have they done with
Uh-huh.
have a good, fast upgrade path, people upgrade quickly, how does the watch do?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I have some numbers we can maybe look at somewhere, because like I notice adoption rates is like 70% on iOS 12 right now. I would assume the watch is in line with that, but I may be wrong. So, and one thing, I know that I'm much more hesitant to update my watch personally, just because I know that there's no rolling back. So like when watchOS 5 came out, I waited several days because I had that event coming up. And when I did update, my battery life was like 30 minutes to an hour. And then when the the first patch came out, fixed it. So I would have been not in good shape had I updated. So, and once again, no way to roll back, so you're stuck. So that'd be good to know for sure. So. Okay, all right. Thank you.